It's December, which means it's time for a long overdue update on my HO scale Southern New England Railway. One area that's pretty new since the last update is this bridge crossing scene. This represents the Missisquoi River in Vermont. These are Central Valley truss girder bridges. I've built 2 of them. Every time the season changes, the gap between the swing gate gets a little large. This is about as large as I ever let it get. This is almost 3/8 of an inch, and it's pretty significant, but the train seemed to negotiate it okay as long as we watch the speed. I've spent a significant amount of time and effort in the last 14 or 15 months or so incorporating this section of Jason Fontaine's Southern New England Railroad up in Massachusetts. Back in July of 2023, I moved it down here to Virginia, or at least this one section of it, and I've been incorporating it into my Southern New England Railroad. And so it's been a lot more work than I anticipated, but I'm glad I was able to save a piece of Jason's wonderful railroad. Where you see here, the covered bridge is actually new. Bill Schulteis built that model, but the waterfall and the water in the Martin Machine building and all that is part of the original Southern New England Railroad from up in Massachusetts. But one thing I did have to do when we incorporated this into my layout, we had to put about a 4-foot long section where we could blend it all together. This is really quite a tale, this whole process. I probably should just do a separate video just on incorporating these 2 pieces of railroad together and blending them so they look like one cohesive layout. I think I've been pretty successful at it so far. There's more work to do, but it's starting to at least look finished and not like a construction zone. So one thing I did do is I couldn't figure out how to incorporate that other layout section into mine and keep the level crossing with the St. Johnsbury and Lake Champlain Railroad. So we abandoned that. I have some plans for some other structures and stuff over here, and maybe a small flag stop station. And this is now the connecting track. Instead of being just a dead-ended spur that ended at the edge of the layout like it used to, it now connects to the main line of my Southern New England Railway.
I have 2 favorite rail fan spots on the railroad, and this is one of them. Let's go ahead and watch the train go by.
Another area I've done a fair amount of work is, especially on the scenery, is between Williams Creek, which is a bridge crossing here that I've shown in many other videos, and the town of Stafford Mills, which is the lead into our paper mill complex. So I've gotten some grass in here, I've planted some trees, I finished this white New England house, planted the country store in place, finished blending in that background mill building, ballasted a lot of the track. The corrugated building down in the distance is actually a warehouse for a local lumber yard. And then you can see going into the curve in the distance, you can see where I've also continued some scenery. This blank area here is earmarked for a station and small freight house. The white paper outline you see on the table there on the layout is an outline for the warehouse for the paper mill, the large warehouse for the paper mill. Just to orient you, there's that corrugated warehouse for the lumber company. You can see the country store and the White House in the background there. So this is the other side of the paper mill peninsula, looking in at this curve scene. I'm actually pretty pleased with how this turned out. I just wanted to represent a pasture with the track curving in the distance with a line of forested trees, thick forest trees behind it. And I think it came out pretty well.
This pasture is a great spot to set up and get some views of the train as it goes around the curve. Let's look and listen.
The next town down the line is the small farming community of Berkshire. Uh, this is still very much under construction, although I've started positioning some buildings. Some of these are just placeholders to give me an idea of what size and shape building will look well. Others are more permanent. Obviously, the station is in place. In the last couple of months, I've done a lot of groundwork around the station, a lot of ground cover, although I do want to add some more static grass in here and make this look more like a road and not just a big expanse of gravel and grout. The road behind there, I'm probably going to put some buildings or small stores along here just to make it look a little bit more like a town. And of course, there's always cows. That pretty much covers the changes or updates on the around the wall portion of the layout. And turning our attention to the main Richford Peninsula here. The turntable used to be here, as you can tell from the outline. For a number of reasons, I went ahead and moved the turntable down to the distance down there. We'll go take a walk over there and I'll show it to you. So the turntable is now in this sort of inside the curve here. Plans are afoot for what's going to be here. I don't know if I'm going to put a small engine house here or just some sheds and maybe a machine shop or something. I haven't quite decided yet. So this is not supposed to be a major engine facility, but it will have a small coaling tower. This is going to be based on one that was in Palmer, Massachusetts, which was the western terminus of the planned Southern New England Railway in real life. It was also a small yard that the Central Vermont used, and the coaling tower there is a nice small coaling tower. A number of other people have had models of it on their layouts over the years, notably Lou Sassy, and his model was inspired by Paul Dolphus's. I did rearrange some of the track going in and out of the paper mill. Sometimes I get a little greedy, like most model railroaders do, and I want more tracks. More industry track, and there was one track here, you can kind of see the ghost of it, was an old spur into one side of the river side of the plywood mill, and that really constantly we were having a lot of derailment problems and other issues with the turnout that was right here. It was just kind of forced into the spot. It never really quite worked right, and besides, it was making the plywood mill itself too thin. I had too narrow of a space for it down there, as you can see from the paper outline and the footprint. So what I wanted to do is enlarge that, and in the process I took out this track. The other thing I wanted to do is, as we were starting to operate the layout, I found we were constantly getting stuck with our cabooses, and we needed a place to kind of put them. I felt the operating scheme would benefit from having one, and so that's what this is here. You can see obviously the caboose track here. Apologize for the sun flare. We actually have a sunny day for once here in Virginia. And of course, to install the turnout for that, the turnout to go into the caboose track was under the layout in a spot. You probably can't see it, but there's an awful lot of, it's right where the IKEA cabinets and the joists and everything else are. It was really, really difficult, if not impossible, to get under it for a Torus switch machine. But anyway, in this case, I did want to power it, and I ended up using a small little servo switch motor. And since that had to be on top of the table, I had to put that in something. So I put it in a little building, and it's kind of stuffed in this little shed. And if you look over here, you can see the one clue as to what I'm doing is the throw wire that goes from inside the shed over to the throw bar on the turnout. So that worked out pretty well. Other than that, there's not really much else to report. I'll try to do some updates more regularly. I also want to try to do some how-to videos on a more regular basis, and working on a couple of those. Anyway, thanks for watching, and have a great holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Thanks. Bye.